Segel. I'm John Kane, and this is Let's Talk Native. I spend a great deal of time talking about what Native people go through in the U.S. and Canada, but not so much on what our relatives have and are going through in Central and South America. Well, with this program, I have an opportunity to tell one story that is both inspiring and perhaps will open the door to more. My guest this week is Ervin Liz. Ervin is a multi-generational native coffee farmer in Colombia. His people are Nasa, and he is working with his people to form a collective to acquire more land, expand their coffee production, and go direct to market with their product. I want to thank his U.S. associates for connecting me with Ervin and making it possible to tell his story. All right, I want to introduce and thank Ervin Liz for joining me on the program. Look, one of the things that I've got to say is this podcast, which is really about Native voices, and I spent a great deal of time talking about the oppression that Native people have experienced. But I haven't had as many Native guests from South America or even Central America. I don't have as many contacts, so I appreciate your friend Ben for reaching out to me to suggest having you join me on the program. And so let's go ahead and do it. Ervin, give me a little bit of your background, and then we'll kind of develop the story as we go.
All right, thank you so much, John. So my name is Ervin Liz. I am a Nasa native from the south of Colombia. So NASA is spelled just as the NASA, as the International Space Administration, right? So we are a group of indigenous peoples in the south, in the Cauca state. My parents and pretty much my entire family are 100% indigenous peoples, and we still at home speaking our native language, although it has been diminishing over the times. And as this morning I was listening to one of the latest podcasts that you had, and I was just remembering about the struggles that indigenous peoples here in Colombia have had, because they are very similar to the issues that have happened throughout the entire continent, I guess. And one of those issues with colonization was the outsiders trying to take away our mother tongue, and that's kind of like the worst you can do to any group, I guess, because it removes your identity. I believe that language is one of the main things that can bring you back to your origins, and you get to understand things in a way that you don't understand without that language. So anyways, in our case, we're fortunate to still have our own language still spoken at home. And so basically, to give a little bit of background, in 2010, I had the opportunity to go on a scholarship to study in Norway to complete my high school. And then from there in 2012, I went to the US to do my college program, and I did that at Iowa Luther College, where I also met Ben, and that's how we know about each other. And basically, when I was at Luther, I was able to meet a person. His name is also John. His name is John Backlund, and I presented to him a business idea, because when I was in college, I wanted to get out of college and do something that could help me, of course, but also help the community. And I say this because I don't come from a wealthy family. Most indigenous peoples in my area, they are living in very difficult circumstances, and most people just barely make a living. And so, in my case, I felt that it was a big responsibility, to take care of myself and my family, and along the way also help, other people. So that's kind of like how I started thinking about it. And so I created a business plan. I presented this business plan to my friend, and this business plan was pretty much about buying coffee from my community, bringing it to the U.S., paying it better to the farmers, bringing it to the U.S., selling it there, and that's pretty much what it was. Because what I wanted to do was do something that was something that I was familiar with. And I grew up in a coffee farm, right? And I didn't know much about the whole, everything that is involved in delivering a final, product to the consumer. But I did know a little bit about farming it. I did know a little bit about processing it, and most importantly, I knew about struggles of coffee farmers, not just indigenous, but pretty much every coffee farmer in Colombia, right? So Colombia has a lot of coffee farmers, and most of them, they don't have more than 2 hectares of land. So it's a very small amount of land, and that's all they have to make a living. And it gets very difficult when the prices are set by a exchange in the US that dictates what value that coffee has. And there is a lot of intermediaries, usually anywhere between 4 and 5 intermediaries. And so I wanted to cut down that and bring the coffee directly, again, from my family, from my neighbors, to the consumers. And that way, we could pay the farmers a lot better. And so that's what we started doing pretty much. And that's where we are now.
Well, talk to me a little bit about coffee as it relates to your tradition. Is this now? I assume that you as coffee growers go back pre-colonization. It's probably a product or an agricultural product that you guys have been involved with traditionally for many generations.
Right. So not quite as far back. So coffee was introduced by the Spaniards to the continent. However, we have been growing, corn and potatoes and different other different crops. We grow them along with coffee, right? And that's kind of like one of the things that Ben and Braden and Travis got to see when they came here to Colombia. They were here about a month ago, and they could see that for us indigenous peoples, is very different compared to other coffee growers. We don't just grow coffee, right? We try and protect the land or take care of the land by bringing in a lot of crops that do different things. So we will have all sorts of plants that are nitrogen fixating plants, so legumes. We will have all sorts of plants that have roots that allow for air circulation in the ground and that kind of thing. So coffee has been a crop that we have been using for our economic sustenance, but it hasn't been a crop that has been with us forever. It was introduced.
So in many ways, coffee farming was actually a way that the Spaniards exploited your lands and your people, right, to produce a product that was pretty much something that they marketed and that they controlled, and that's kind of where the story goes so badly, because not only do you have colonization as it relates to language and culture, but it also ends up being a colonization economically. And so now you have taken back some of that,
right,
and utilizing coffee as kind of a cash crop supplement to the more traditional farming that you guys have always been involved in.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So coffee and sugarcane were the two main crops that the Spaniards brought, and lots of the lands that were stolen were cultivated with these crops, and they will put indigenous peoples to work in there after in the land that was stolen from them. But again, like you said, now we have taken that back, and in here we also had a big movement back in the 50s. It was called the land recuperation movement, right? So where indigenous peoples will go and take back the lands that were stolen. Back then it was a little bit more it was a little bit more violent, unfortunately. But today we have a lot of legal means to take back lands that are still in the hands of Spaniard descendants. But yes, one of the good things that we have done is take back those lands and use that for our own benefit, even though it's not enough, because most of the lands that we have taken back are the lands from the mountains, which are not the best suited lands for large agricultural production. But it is still something that, if our grandparents, if our ancestors had not fought for that, we will not have any of that.
Well, and then you know getting the land back and even asserting yourselves as coffee producers does not solve the overall problem of the control of the industry by obviously the American market and probably some of the other international markets. So for you to step up and try to put together some collaborations with your fellow farmers and neighbors to like as you said, cut out some of the middlemen and to give yourselves a stronger presence in and control, I guess, over pricing and that kind of stuff is really the work that you've had to apply yourself to.
Right, exactly. So we price our coffees different, and it is a lot of work, because there is out there is already a market that has been shaped by the big industry players, right? And there is also quality standards, and there is all sorts of things in place to guide those prices. However, in our case, we wanted to do something very different, right? We wanted to not adhere necessarily to to the prices that were set out there, or to the quality standards, but we wanted to do something better. And so by doing that, by improving our production processes, by talking about our agricultural practices, the indigenous practices of, again, blending different crops with the coffee. The coffee is one of the plants that can absorb a nutrients from other plants, but also by doing that, they can sort of like take flavored notes and aromas from other plants. It's a highly absorbent kind of like I guess plant, and it has been scientifically proven. So this is not just me talking about it. The Colombian Coffee Federation has the largest coffee lab in the world, and they have studied that in there, and they have proven that, right? So when we do that, when we grow fruits, when we grow corn, when we grow all sorts of plants along with the coffee, we ensure that several things, but one of those things is that the quality of the coffee is always higher compared to when there is only a mono crop, right? A single crop that is grown in there. We have several things that improves the quality. We have also been studying, learning about different processes. So we are now doing processes that in the past would have not been made. So with that, we add a value to that coffee. And so by doing all of these things, we have a final product that is much different to what the standards are out there in the market. And so because of that, we can offer higher quality at a different price. And by doing that at a higher price, and by doing that, we can bring better income to our neighbors, to our NASA neighbors.
Well, and there's a big movement towards organic products and that kind of stuff. So I would imagine the more that you move from what has been the commercial industry processes for growing, gives you not only distinction in terms of the quality and even the flavor, but it gives you distinction in terms of process, and that creates not only again a higher value, but it also creates a lot more distinction for what you're doing.
Right. Right. I just wanted to talk about one last thing with regards to that. My parents, they have always, seen, or pretty much all indigenous peoples here in this area, they see Earth, and I believe, in North America is the same thing, as our mother. So we want to take care of it. And one of the big things we do is, the coffee has a lot of the entire production process has a lot of byproducts. So what we do is we take a lot of that and just bring it back to the ground, bring it back to the earth, and that is one of the things that it's not done anywhere else, right? And so we take care of those wastes, water waste and solid wastes, and bring it back to the ground. And it allows for the microbiome to flourish and also contribute to the quality of the coffee that we bring to the market.
Now, you obviously you're coffee growers, but you talked a little bit about processing. Are you roasting, and are you is the product you're selling more than just the raw coffee bean at this point?
No, we do everything. So we, in the case of my family, we have our own farm, and like I said, we also buy the coffee from other farmers. So we do everything in house. We produce the initial process, which is basically the threshing of the coffee after the coffee has been dried. It is done in my house. We have a warehouse, and we do all of the process in there. And then from there, we get the finished raw material, which is what we use to roast. So it's called green coffee, right? So that green coffee, we bring it here to the capital city of Colombia, to Bogota. Here we roast it. We don't have our own roasting plant, but we have a manufacturing plant that does for us. So they are also our allies. So that will be kind of like the only third party involved in that case, but they don't have control of that. So basically they are an outsourcing company for us. They do the manufacturing, and then from here it gets shipped to the U.S., to Native Root US, and over there, Ben, Braid, and Travis, they are the ones doing the commercial process, the sales process, and it gets distributed either directly to the consumer or to some supermarkets, and that's pretty much how we do it. So everything is done in-house in that sense.
So there is product that somebody can go to a website today,
right,
and purchase it, and that website is nativeroots.com.
Yeah, and it's called nativerootcoffee.com.
Not roots,
yeah,
with no S. Native Root Coffee.
Yeah, just Native Root. Yeah, just nativerootcoffee.com.
Okay.
And yeah, somebody could buy directly the roasted coffee in there. If they wanted green coffee, so like if they wanted to roast their own coffee, they could also get it in there like a roaster. They could also get it in there. It's a different selling process, because we don't normally, sell just like 1 or 2 pounds of green, but we still have that service open.
I see. No, so do you have any major retailers that are distributing your coffee in the United States as well?
Right. So Ben and Braden have been, at the having leading the process of getting into supermarkets, and we're now, I believe, in 16 Hy-Vees in the Midwest. So they are based out of the Quad Cities in Iowa, and Hy-Vee is kind of like a big chain of supermarkets in this area. So they have managed to get into 16 as of now.
Well, and of course, we live in a world now where so many people are ordering stuff online that you are actually your timing is great as far as this notion of online purchasing. Um, give me a sense for how transformative this has been to your neighbors and to other native growers in your region. And is this something that you're seeing other groups that you may not be associated with, starting to emulate a little bit?
Yeah, so there has been a lot of projects of this nature to kind of like create more economic participation for indigenous communities. However, lots of these projects have been public, or managed by the public, and in some cases that doesn't work very well because there isn't. I honestly can't tell the details, but in most cases this project get abandoned after a point in time, and I believe that might be because they were maybe projects that were made without consulting the community first, without looking into what the actual needs are and what people actually want to do. So in our case, because this is a private project, I mean it is private because I was the one who started it, and now my family is in it. But with the neighbors, the relationship is a lot different than compared than if it was a public project, in that they have been our neighbors of our entire life, right? And they know what we have been doing. My father used to trade coffee in the past as well, so they know my father, and they all communicate in the NASA language, so that creates also a lot more trust. But also because this is something that the people are already doing, right? It's not something that was imposed onto them. It's something that they are already doing, and because they are getting paid better for it, then they have a big incentive to say, yes, we want to continue on this path. We want to improve our processes so that the quality is higher and therefore the payment is higher. And the impact has been, so we have been working since 2017, which is a very short period of time in this sense, because it's only been about 5 years. And initially, I set with a goal of working with 100 farmers. Right now we're working with about 35 farmers. That's how many farmers we're working with at the moment, and so we are, in terms of volume, we're doing about a ton to a ton and a half per month. That's how much coffee we're moving between the farmers and our clients. All of these are specialty coffees, right? So these are very high end coffees, and the farmers get paid about 10, sometimes 20, 25% a premium on top of what the market is. So nowadays they are doing really well because the coffee has increased in value over the last about 4 months because of a frost in Brazil that killed a huge amount of the coffee production. And so because of that, the coffee has increased in price a lot, and we still keep on paying our farmers, our allied farmers, the premiums that they deserve for the quality. And so in this case, we that's one direct way of looking at what they are doing compared to what they were doing before, right? So they are getting paid more. But that's not the only thing that we have done. So my family has always been, we have had the fortune to, we are 5 children, which is a big family. And all of us have had the fortune to, to go to college. And, my eldest sister, from the very beginning, she started a kind of like a annual fundraising campaign. we have been doing that since I can remember. And when I started with the coffee company, which initially was called the Colombian Coffee Connection, we also started doing fundraising through the Colombian Coffee Connection and bringing home, some resources to help elders, to help children that needed it. So through that, we have been able to build two homes for two elderly couples who did not have a place to live. And we have donated to there is a farmer who we started working with at the very beginning, and he got really ill lately. And we have also been able to fundraise for him, give him the money to go to the hospital. And every year we bring gifts to the children. We bring food and different things like that. This year, this year, it was this year, we did a fundraiser. We raised about, I think, close to $5,000 to bring food as well to the families that were affected. So it was last year, November, who were affected by, there was a huge national strike here in Colombia. And through the company, through my clients, because how I before we created the Native Root Coffee company with Ben and the other business partners, I was already doing these kind of things, and I had a lot of clients, and with them I was able to raise all of that money. Pretty much all that money was raised just me, letting people know what was going on, telling them about the struggles of the people. And I got a lot of people supporting the program. And so we have done lots of things of that nature. This year we will also be doing the same thing. And of course, the company always donates a percentage of everything that is raised to also help the community. So it's not just one thing, because I always believe that there should be fairness, and there should be humanity above everything else. Because for me, it is in a way about making profits, but it's not just about that. It's about doing that in a conscious way, in a human way, about taking care of the people here, and just doing things right, because those are the values that we as Indigenous peoples have grown with, is to take care of yourself and also take care of the community.
Well, I also know that there has been a fair trade movement for a number of years, and but for those of us who see these kind of social movements that offer or intend to be beneficial, especially to going back to the indigenous farmers and that kind of stuff, we know sometimes that they fall short. So it sounds like what you're doing is actually probably a step above what is being broadcasted or known as the fair trade movement. Can you can you offer any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so fair trade, I have never agreed with them. I never liked them, and because and that is because I have lived, my family have lived what they offer, and what they offer isn't really good. So I'm not gonna go too far into what they do, but for the most part, is not really helping that much the people. If anything, it's in most cases, most of these seals of quality of whatever, it's just something that a bigger company buys and then puts as a sticker on the bag, and then they say that they are whatever. And I have looked into many of these certifications, and just kind of like to talk about yeah, I think it is fair trade. You have to rainforest is one of those that supposedly helps the farmer get a better income. It costs about $5,000 for you to be certified. And when you think about a farmer that only has 2 hectares of land, who only can sell about 800 to 1,000 kilos of coffee a year, when are they going to pay for a certification like that? they are never going to be able to pay for a certification like that. So I have never agreed with any of um, programs that certify you to do something, because we have seen what it is. And at some point, one of the co-ops in the region, I think they were certified for fair trade. And we as a family, we never saw any of that any of that extra fair money that was supposed to come through. And I'm pretty sure if you ask almost any Colombian farmer, they are all going to complain about it, because it never does anything better. It never does anything different. So for us, it's not about the certifications. It is about real, honest, responsibility and connection with the people. And again, for me, this is something that I feel very strongly, because it is not just any farmer. It's not just anybody. They are my neighbors. Most of them are young people that grew up with me in the reservation. I know them by name, and I know who they are. I know what their struggles are. I know their children. Many of them already have children. Already have families. And so when it comes to fairness, for me, it's not just about the word. It is something that I have to do. It is something that
I really do. I appreciate your honesty on this, because I've got to admit, I'm somewhat suspect of all of that too. This idea that you have a larger, oftentimes just as colonial type of entity that is going to certify something as being fair or honest or whatever. And as Native people who are involved sometimes in producing art or jewelry and that kind of stuff, we get into this whole idea of whether something is really native made or not. And the crazy part is you end up having the government involved. They pass, so you get the United States passing laws that will help certify, but that certification is based on their so-called federal recognition of whether you're even native or not. So it gets very, very complicated. And while some people think that it's, that there may be some good incentives or good intentions, I should say, involved, oftentimes it's not quite as, it's certainly not as fair or as honest as what people say. So and I'm sorry, I didn't want to catch you off guard with that question, but I know that in the United States, you're going to always hear this notion of fair trade, and that. Heck, that goes for everything, to everything associated with diamonds out of Africa to coffee and out of Colombia. So, So I appreciate your honesty and your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Well, again, tell me, looking at a little bit of the history, I guess, how was that struggle? Obviously, we know that there was a big movement in the 50s where countries got their independence from Spain specifically. So there was a real decolonization movement. Unfortunately, that hasn't ever taken place in places like North America with Native people in Canada and the United States. All of that international support for independence never, it seemed like it was always geared more towards Spanish and Portuguese colonies than they were towards English speaking colonies. But talk to me about your family going through that period, not only for independence from Spain, but decolonization as it relates to still being under a lot of Spanish influence.
Right. So it has been a long time since the Spaniards came here. It's been a little bit over 500 years, and all of that time leaves a lot of scars and a lot of cultural aspects that don't go away that easily, and it is very unfortunate. But on the other hand, the NASA community have always been known to be to be always fighting against the colonial strategies to kind of like make indigenous peoples more westernized. And the NASA were one of the very few groups here in Colombia that was never actually as the Spaniards would call it, conquered by war, right? They couldn't do it because the NASA natives have always been warriors, and we live in an area that is very difficult to kind of like access and make and wage war, right? And so because of that, because the NASA lived in this area, and because they also were warriors, the Spaniards never could come in by force. And so the only way that they had to kind of like enter the territory was through religion. And that's what they use, right? And when they started coming in with religion, because they couldn't do it with weapons, they had to come in with religion. And that's kind of like the biggest aspect, I will say, in terms of that legacy of the colonizers is the religion aspect. And a lot of the indigenous or the NASA chiefs in the past, at some point, they adopted the religion, and many of them actually built churches, Catholic churches that are still standing up to today. Some of them date back from the 1600s, and that's kind of like the biggest thing that you have to overcome. But it's not easy because for a very long time, just like in Canada, there were boarding schools where they will take children to, and they will tell them that the NASA language, the NASA Yugwe, was the language of the devil, and so they will tell them that they couldn't speak that language because they were speaking like devils. And so that process took away the language from. So the NASA were spread in a very wide area, and now it has been reduced probably to about 50% of what it was in the past. And many of the reservations, they have lost the language completely. There is nobody in those reservations speaking the language. So one way to decolonize, and it has been a general consensus from all of the NASA reservations, is to work back our way to our culture, to our language, through education. So nowadays we have a indigenous government, right? That rules over indigenous land, and we also have our own educational system. So this educational system was instituted back in, I believe, 2005. It might have been 2010. I don't remember exactly, but it hasn't been too long. It's been a very short period of time, and with our own educational system, one of the required subjects is NASA Yugwe, our native language. And so one way to go back is doing that. And we as a family as well, just directly from my family experience, my grandfather and my father and most of my relatives, they have been chiefs at the reservation. And with that responsibility, they have tried and advocate for, bringing back our old tradition, bringing back our traditional medicine, bringing back, shamanism, which has been something that for the NASA indigenous people is always been about. It's called the good life, right? So it's not just mysticism. It's about being able to understand nature, live with it, understand it, respect it, and you as an entity of nature, how you can relate to it. That's kind of like
That is so
what it is.
consistent with what Native values are throughout indigenous communities. This idea that our relationship with creation, not so
Right.
necessarily the deification of creation,
Yes.
but our relationship with creation is such a big part of it. And I know this is a difficult topic because when the church was used as such a major part of assimilation, it we find ourselves in circumstances. Look, even as we are now really pushing back on the residential school issues in both the United States and Canada, and calling out and trying to hold people accountable, we often see not just the government but the churches try to make their overtures. And in fact, we know that the Pope has apologized and done these things, especially in South America, for the role the church has played in colonization and the sins of colonization. But oftentimes those apologies are so hollow because they don't, as you mentioned, you listened to a previous podcast where I talked about we not being able to have reconciliation without restoration. If
Right.
we don't see some actions that are associated, like I said, the church talks about contrition, right? That it isn't enough to be sorry. You need to take actions that will demonstrate your effort to correct the wrongs of the past. And I find sometimes the words are pretty hollow, but it also makes it very difficult because we as people who previous generations, and in fact sometimes many generations, became so indoctrinated into that church culture that sometimes our own people have a difficult time pushing back against it. And I know that's tough because as a younger generation that are perhaps not as indoctrinated into that church culture, we have to be respectful of our elders at the same time. And I know this is difficult, and I can almost sense that this was a bit of a tough place for you to go, but I understand it completely.
Yeah, no, it's totally been because also the younger generation, they are a little bit more educated than the previous one, at least in our communities, right? So in the past it was just about believing in whatever the institution was telling you to believe, without any criticism of it, any critical thinking about it, right? And I, like I said, I had the fortune to be educated in the US and in other parts of the world, and so with that I have become a lot more critical of everything. And it's not just about being critical for the sake of being critical. Is that you have to take into consideration the context. You have to look at the history. You have to look at so many aspects so that you are able to make up your own mind. In the end, nowadays we cannot simply change things. We have to also respect people, what they want to believe in. But at the same time, it is I think a huge responsibility to know the past, to know what has happened, to try and correct those mistakes, and to also look at, in my case, my own NASA identity. Look how that has affected me, how that has some form of impact in my life, and what I have to do as I move forward. And my grandfather, he was a traditional medicine person. He was also a shaman, and so my father tells me that I was born with his help, because when I was still unborn, I was not in the right position, right, to be born. I was across, and my grandfather, he started doing his rituals and he was touching his own stomach, doing as if he was the one who was pregnant, and he finally fixed me in the right position, and then he said he's ready to be born, and at that moment I was born. So there is this kind of things that have happened, and so again, I have to take into consideration everything. I have to look at everything. I have to make a an assessment of all the context, and make up my own mind, and that's kind of like where I'm at. And it is a struggle because it's we have all been influenced by by everything that is around, and so it's a tough situation. It's if anything, it just makes me always just wonder what is relationship between me and God, me and nature, me and my family, because I don't know, maybe there is a connection between everything, but for a long time, unfortunately, religion was used to do so much damage to the community, and that has to be accounted for.
Well, and let's be honest. I mean, religion also tied into not just the exploitation of us spiritually, but and culturally, language, but economically, the impact that the church has played on capitalism, on on the seizing of land for the state, and for for so many other parts of what we see today that are impacting things like climate change and consumerism and that kind of stuff. A lot of that was advocated, if not implemented, through the church. So what we see today is a return to some of these traditional ways of thinking and living, are starting to be viewed by not just Indigenous people, but other people to say, look, there must be better solutions to the way that we are living on the planet. So I think trying to reevaluate our traditions and some, not just our beliefs, but that knowledge that that was attempted to be covered up and buried by church and state and that kind of thing is so important. So and I see what you're doing, even as a return back to talk about coffee and coffee growing and distribution. I see that you are introducing a value system that is more based on tradition and culture, and and I did want to step back into some of that oppressive past, only to demonstrate what you're doing now and how much distinction there is to what you're doing now.
Yes, exactly. And again, I just wanted to reiterate what you just said. It's not just about in this case about it's not just about taking that capitalist ideas and bringing it here to do something, but it's about mixing what I have learned on the outside. Is mixing what I have learned on the inside, right? Is bringing the roots, and I think that's why our names is also very representative. It's native root, right? Because we are the majority owners of the company, we as a family, and we are natives, right? So we're taking sort of like the best of both sides to be able to bring something different for the community. I believe that there should be intervention from the government, but there also should be our own personal responsibilities, right? When it comes to reparations, when it comes to making a change in the world, right? So I don't want to just wait and depend on a third party to make the changes. That's kind of like what I have learned, right? So because of that, I am taking this institution, capitalism, to be able to bring good to the community, to the people, while we bring to that product that knowledge and traditions that we have always carried with us, that was taken away from us but that we have recovered, and it actually is very valuable, not just as a tradition, but as something tangible that gives a higher quality to the products that we are bringing to the market.
Well, and I appreciate that. I mean, look, we know that we all do depend on currency, on purchasing many of the products that we use to live day to day. But one of the things that is clear as we see kind of a foreboding future because of climate change and that kind of stuff, the more that we rely on the people closest to us. And so when we talk about local economy, when we talk about being fair to each other, this is it's an important aspect, and I think it gets, I mean, and it has a direct tie to our traditions and our culture. So I look at what you're doing, and again, I'm very optimistic. I think a lot of what you're doing is the way many industries have to change, and especially agricultural industries. We know that there's such exploitation when it comes to agriculture in general, and the people who have their hands in the soil are the ones who are exploited the most, and that goes back to slavery and any number of other things that have been a part of building the very capitalist system that we exist in today. That it's built upon some of those things. So the idea that we start to empower the people who are actually the producers, and empower the people who are actually putting their knowledge and their traditions and that kind of thing back into the products that we consume. I think that's a very positive thing. So I applaud the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Well, let's finish it off by again talking about the products that you give me a sense, because I'm not I'm going to pull your site up, and your site again is nativerootcoffee.com.
Yes.
And give me a sense what somebody's going to find when they go there.
Yeah, so they're gonna see. So we wanted to put the farmers at the front of it, and so they're gonna see the stories of the farmers. They're gonna see 4 products right now, right? And each product has their own. It's on description, who grew the coffees, all of that. Because again, part of that honesty comes from saying who was the people who grew this coffee. So they are if, when somebody goes in there, they're gonna see that, they're gonna see those stories. And I mean, those are the 2 important things. They are gonna see coffee, the descriptions, who produced the coffees. They are gonna see some highlights about the farmers' profiles. And if somebody wanted to go into the coffee club as well, if somebody loves coffee and wants to support this project, they can get into the coffee club and get coffee every month as well.
That's cool. All right. Well. Again, I want to tell you how much I appreciate, and I want to give a thanks to Ben for connecting us. And let's stay in touch, if you will. I'm gonna check out your website, and I will become a customer. I'm a coffee consumer, so I
Nice.
will be the consumer of your coffee. I would also be interested in trying to facilitate in any way that I can to connect you to other Native people that I'm familiar with, because I know I do have some friends who are in the coffee business, and while they may have existing suppliers, there may be other Native people who are interested in marketing your product and that kind of stuff. So perhaps maybe there's some collaboration that we can forge out of this as well. But you definitely have me interested in being a consumer. So we'll see what we can do from there. Again, Ervin Liz, I want to thank you so much for joining me on the program. I am interested in staying in touch with you, so let's do some follow up, and we'll have you back.
Sounds very good. Thank you so much, John. And we'll make sure to get you a an extra amount of coffee so that you can try it. And maybe when Ben, we should organize a sample box for John, so that he can, taste all of the coffees that we have available. And for sure, any kind of connection help us, because like I said at the beginning, our goal is to be able to, buy the production from 100 farmers in next year, right? So we're at 35 right now. So we're doing a good progress. But what that means is, we have to sell a lot more product. So, all of that helps. And ultimately it comes down to, bringing better incomes to the farmers down here. So everything helps. Thank you so much.
I want to thank Ervin Liz for joining me on Let's Talk Native. His company is Native Root Coffee. You can find them online at nativerootcoffee.com. I have had the pleasure of sampling this incredible coffee, and I encourage listeners to give them a try. Their product is a real treat and would make a fine gift. So please, again, check them out at nativerootcoffee.com and give them a try. Yahweh. Thank you for checking out the show. As always, if you like what you hear, you can support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/Let's Talk Native. You can follow the show on Twitter at Let's Talk Native. You can also follow us on Instagram at Let's Talk Native TV. You can also join our Facebook group page. I am John Kane, and this is Let's Talk Native. Yahweh.